Welcome back to another episode of Walked In. Tonight, we're going to venture over to the West Coast football, and we're going to look at the Oregon Ducks. So, this year, we all know they had Bo Nix, and after his 20th year of college football, he is finally going to the NFL draft. Now, Bo Nix was very good for the Ducks this past year with Dan Lanning, which happens to be one of my favorite head coaches. And, that makes you think, who do they have this year at quarterback? Well, it's pretty much a shoe in, and that it was Dillon Gabriel. So this guy is coming out of Oklahoma, transferred from UCF after sustaining an injury, where I think he got his medical red shirt because he is also on his last year of college football, and this one is the one he has to make it count. So just like Oregon, he's going big, and he's not trying to go home. So I think we need to take a look at this guy and see how is respectively in terms of how he's going to be at Oregon with what he does. Rev, would you like to say some words before we get into the tape?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of Dillon Gabriel. I was very sad when he went to Oklahoma, just because I was hoping that he was going to either do something great at UCF or maybe go to a different school that wasn't OU. But OU got a great one, and despite some rough beginnings to their 2022 season, they finished very strong, and then they had a really good 2023. Obviously, dropped the Red River Showdown to Texas, and then they dropped a bad game in the Bedlam game against Oklahoma State. Otherwise, they would have been contending, as the other top teams were. So I just want to go over a couple of his stats or kind of the overarching view of what he's done with his 5 years of play. The 2021 season was where he got hurt. He broke his left clavicle, and it was a middle of the season injury, so it ended that season for him. And that's when he transferred to Oklahoma after the close of that. But 2019 was his first year at UCF. He took the reins over from Mackenzie Milton after Mackenzie Milton went down with a gruesome injury to his leg. And if you didn't follow UCF football or you didn't see them play with Mackenzie Milton at the helm, you missed out because he was an absolute superstar. He's probably the best quarterback that year until he got hurt. And I would say he should have been a Heisman finalist, if not the winner that year, but obviously he was injured. So then his best friend, they came from the same high school, I believe, out of Hawaii, took over the reins, and Milton transferred out when he eventually became healthy. So Dillon Gabriel, he is a stud. He's had 4 years of over 3,000 yards passing. Obviously, the only year he didn't was when he got hurt. 2019, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 3,600 yards, just about right under his 60% completion rate. 2020 had a 60% completion rate, 3,570 yards, 32 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 2021 season he got injured, but he was on pace for a very good season. He was 70 of 102 attempts, 68. That's a 68 completion percentage. He already had 800 yards of offense, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks. So he's still well on his way to putting up good numbers that year. And then he transferred to Oklahoma in the last 2 years. He in 2022, 62.7 completion percentage, 3,168 yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's more of a down year for him, honestly, compared to all of his other years. But then this last year that we've just finished, 2023, 69.3% completion percentage, the highest of his career, 3,660 yards, so 7 more than his former career high, which was at his first year at UCF. 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He was only sacked 17 times. Had an overall rating of 172, which was his highest. He also did some damage on the ground, especially this last year. 93 carries, 373 yards of offense or of rushing yards, 4 yards at average. That's also including sacks back there, and then 12 touchdowns and a long of 44. So I mean, he can run. It's not like he's just scampering for 10 yards here and there and doing a bunch of short ones. So he's a dynamic athlete. He makes a lot of really great throws and a lot of really good decisions. This year, he led OU to a fantastic year, kind of got them back on track in Venerable's second year as head coach. And we're going to get into the film and just see all the stuff that he does. but he is a very impressive individual, and Oregon has got a great one for 1 year going into the year where it feels like they're going for it all.
Yeah, and to correct you on one thing before we start, he did actually beat Texas this year, and it was like almost entirely up to Dillon Gabriel to beat him, and he played his probably one of his best games of his
Oh,
career,
he did beat Texas.
and ended up knocking off
You're
Texas.
right. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
so
got that one wrong.
stellar performance from him in that game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, that's crazy. They did lose, to 2 lesser opponents. I think it was, like, Kansas and Oklahoma State.
Right. I forgot. They won the showdown and they lost to Kansas, which is a bad loss. And of course they lost the Bedlam game, which you
Yeah.
never know how that one's gonna go.
But at the same time, that is what happens, unfortunately sometimes, and his picks had to do a lot with that, but, let's look at what Oregon is getting because this is a big game guy. He performs well. We're gonna start off with a nice, over the top bomb. And I know it's against Arkansas State, but it's less about what they're doing against Arkansas State, like his receiver, for instance, and more about what he's doing. And I mean, he takes a nice 5-step drop almost, uh, and he delivers that ball where only his receiver can get it. Or actually, it was a 3-step drop.
Yeah, he's in shotgun and 3-step drop.
And his footwork is on time, and he throws it right out of his drop. So I mean, one thing you look with more veteran and more experienced quarterbacks is their timing. He gets back there on his 3rd step, and he immediately plants, takes a step, and throws it. And that's one thing that you can say about him is he's usually going to be on time, which that comes with experience, and his accuracy is pinpoint. And it depends on situation, of course, but like that last one, back shoulder throw, like this one, over to the
Right over the
sideline
top.
outside and over the top of his receiver. So I mean, this guy can still place balls on point. And you know what else? He has the ability to run. So that is what won him against the game against Texas, in my opinion, is his ability to create plays with his legs. Not only can he extend plays, but he can create plays with his legs. So that's a unique ability about him, and I think that's probably why he didn't get sacked a lot.
Yeah, he has tremendous ability and uh, really good at finding ways to get out of the pocket when it collapses and just extend plays with his legs. And you see that out of the really great quarterbacks in college football all the time now. We almost get kind of spoiled with it because you're seeing highlights of the very top echelon guys do this on a regular basis, but he's one of them. And like this one, he wants to throw this ball, but the route that he wants kind of gets taken away from him. He doesn't like it. He's like, all right, this is not a touchdown ball. It's 3rd and goal. I got to score here. So he's a little bit, he's definitely aware of the down and the distance. So he's 3rd and goal. Okay, I can't just make this, easy check down throw just because this guy's probably going to get tackled at the 1 and we're 4th down. I mean, obviously it's 35 nothing, but he's still, his mindset is touchdown, which obviously you really like that. So then he starts scrambling a little bit. He looks over to the right. All of a sudden, he's getting rushed. He's all right, I'm taking this one in the end zone. And he has an ability to make plays with his arm and with his legs. I mean, 12 rushing touchdowns this season, so clearly he is good on his feet. And with a lower sack count at 17 this year, now obviously that's indicative of a good offensive line, but it's also him getting out the ball out quickly or just escaping, when he's getting pressure. And he loves the deep ball, and he is just he's got a rocket arm and he can hit those shots down the field right down where his receivers need to go and get it right over the heads of DBs frequent basis. And sometimes he doesn't throw it like right on the target like in stride, but he always throws it where his guy can get it, and that's what you like to see in contested catch situations. You want to see giving the receiver the best chance to catch the ball.
Nice little fake there to draw
Mm-hmm.
off the safety just for a second. His awareness and his IQ is really something that you can stand out on tape. He also gets through his progression really well, which I mean that can be said for most veteran quarterbacks if we're being honest. But he gets a quick look off there. and,
Creates a
throws
one-on-one
right over the
situation
head.
down the line and makes a great throw.
So, I mean, this guy knows where he's going with the ball at most points.
And
And,
he's tough. Look at this.
he's for 5'11" and like about a 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Like this dude plays with more size than he has, is what I'd say. So he has a lot of heart when he plays. He wants it. And a lot of players, they don't really care. And this guy does. And I know he's been to 3 different teams, but he does care about his team. So I mean, don't worry about him not having his heart at Oregon and thinking he's just there for money. He's not. This guy's good and wants to make Oregon good and show off his skills. Now, one thing about him, he is left-handed.
Hmm.
And with this play, go back to that one.
Yep.
Now he is left-handed, so his action shouldn't look as good as it does, but his action looks very good. And with this one, he creates more time to throw this ball. And now, while you might say this is a bad ball, if you look right here, what happens? He sees that DB draped on his guy holding him. So he's throwing it to get a call. And, while some might say that's a terrible throw, why would you throw that? That is the football intelligence of Dillon Gabriel being displayed on the football field. And, it's little things like that that you don't see many quarterbacks do. They don't have the awareness to do things like that. And he can make special moments because of his awareness, is one thing I'd like to say about him.
So what he saw there too was he saw that his receiver beat that DB. So in that case, there's a couple things. The DB is trying to catch up with his guy. So that means he's going to stay focused. And it's almost impossible. Not saying it is impossible, because you do see elite level guys who get burned a little bit, make that up, and still make good plays with their bodies turned. But it is a lot to ask of a guy to get beat, try and recover, and still have the presence of mind to turn your head around and try and make a play on the ball. Because when you get beat, that's the only thing you think. I got to get my guy. I got to get to my guy. So Dillon Gabriel recognized, hey, my guy beat him off the edge or on the outside. I'm going to throw this ball up there. It's going to be him versus this DB with his head turned, and either you're going to get a PI out of it or my guy's going to make a play, and he did. So it's also trust in your guys, and you can. I guess I knocked a quarterback earlier in a video just a couple days ago on his reliance on his receivers making big plays, because it felt like a lot of times he was not putting the ball in spots where it was helping his receivers out, and his receivers had to continuously make unbelievable plays to make him look great. And you will see a lot of Oklahoma receivers make great plays, but you also see Dillon Gabriel put them in positions to do that. So they're not having to make outstanding catches, they're having to make good catches, still good catches, but he's still putting the ball in spots for them to make plays on, not where they're having to go way out of their way to make a play on it. And it's a fine line, but there is a difference there. And you see that with him. And then again, the other thing you see, kind of what Chance was talking about, is his heart and his willingness to put it out on the line. Like he's a tough guy. He's a great player, and he is willing to use his body and whatever means necessary to make the plays to get his team to win. And some of these games, like, he really willed his team to wins in big situations.
And, see, like that right there, that is why he has an almost 70% completion rate. It's not like that was a real contested ball. Like all the receiver had to do was catch that and hold on to it. And that's fine. He did extend the play. Sure, we'll say that. Great receivers extend plays and they have yards after the catch. This one does. But
Mm-hmm.
either way, this on a 4th and 7, he stands back there in the pocket, keeps his composure, and waits on something to break open across the middle. And a lot of quarterbacks don't like to throw across the middle. And he sees it and he throws it right over the head of one guy and not far enough where the guy outside of his guy can make a play on it, but right where you can settle into space in between two guys and catch the football. And, once you catch it, bring it in. If you get hit afterwards, that's not Dillon Gabriel's problem. The ball wasn't contested. So, I mean, it's just plays like that. So, I mean, he does have an almost 70% completion record rating for a reason.
Yep. And here's a couple plays in the big game, obviously, the Red River Showdown, and him and his arm and his legs. You already saw in the first one him scoring a touchdown with his legs, him extending plays, throwing the
Yeah,
ball, and then here
looking
again.
downfield to keep,
Yep.
them DBs downfield and off pressure
Right.
before
So
he takes off.
even if he knows he's going to run it, he does a good job of faking that. And I think also there really is a mind for, hey, if a guy pops open, I'm going to throw this thing. But if not, I'm going to get enough yards to extend this drive and get a first down, which you see him do on a regular. Like there he goes again. All right, throws that out to the outside. Hey, that guy still stayed with him, but it froze all the DBs long enough to give him just a few more yards, and he got a first down. That's a big 3rd and 11 in their own territory.
Yeah, and I think
Whew.
Oregon can do a lot of design QB runs with him if they
Yes.
wanted to. Their O-line is very good, and they're big guys. And I mean, Dan Lanning's got them trained up there where they know what they're doing. So I mean, you could tend to see some design quarterback runs this year up in Oregon.
So he made, I believe they were the number one defense. They might have been right under Oklahoma. I'm not quite sure, but uh, he made a pretty good defense look pretty silly with his legs a lot in this game. And I'm sorry that I misspoke for all the Oklahoma fans that heard me misspoke about it earlier, but he is the reason that they overcame Texas. And here is the last drive of the game, a minute left, where he's down and has to lead his team back. And so all I want to point out, all game long, he's had highlights of him doing this very same move where he's faking that he's going to throw it and then he tucks it and runs. So he does a similar action here. It looks like, oh, well, he's doing the same thing, but he's going to run. And he lets it go. And what happened there is the safeties are like, hey, and the linebackers like, hey, this guy, he's going to take this and run. So they're going to still kind of hang back just in case, but they get sucked up enough. They take that extra step, extra 2 steps because they're pretty sure he's going to run. That's what he's done all game long. And then he finds, I believe this is Stoops, right? He finds him across the middle for a giant gain right at the end of the game with a minute left. Now we're in the red zone on the 4 yard line. Uh, what an unbelievable play! I mean, he gets rush, gets home, pocket has collapsed,
I
for
like the
the
way
most
he
part.
ducks. He
Yep.
ducks under the arm tackles, especially with him being 5'11". I mean, his height does matter, and he ducks to get that little bit of separation and
Then he pops up
pops
and just
out
throws it
and
up.
throws it and
Uh,
wide open.
And also look at the DBs who are covering this. Uh, when
So
he,
they see him duck and they
yes,
they they
they
start to
get
come.
frozen.
And we've talked about it in every video that we cover defense. Just one step, one wrong step is all it takes. And you saw that a lot with Texas's DBs, and you'd have to be thinking that he exploited that and he knew
Mm-hmm.
what he was doing.
Yeah, just a little bit of extra action, whether it be head turning, another step, or where your arm is, whether it looks like it's ready to throw, doing a little pump fake, all those little movements that quarterbacks do, that plays with a defensive mind really hard, especially at linebackers and stuff, because like they're trained to look for certain things, and they're training and they're drilling when they see it. Their natural instinct is to go, whatever it might be. And when you do something to mess with that instinct and then switch it up on them, you've now got them confused. And then you exploit that later in the game because now they're thinking about it. So, when you're playing defense, you got to know what you're doing before the snap because when the snap comes, you got to go. It's a very instinctual thing. You obviously got to know what you're doing, but it's an instinctual process of doing your responsibility well. So if you're caught in the middle of a play trying to think, you're going to get stuck and you're going to be slow. And then the quarterbacks who have messed with you early in the game, they now can mess with you in a new way because you're stuck thinking about stuff. And now they exploit that for big plays, which he did against Texas.
Yeah, and one thing that I would like to say about this guy is he's going to be a problem for the Big Ten defenses. Now, I know that you can say the Big 12 doesn't have as much superiority when it comes to defense, and I mean I'd be right there with you in saying that I didn't think that Texas, the best defense that they had, probably was that good. And you could probably see that against Washington if you watch that game or watch one of our breakdowns. But I like to see him against these Big Ten defenses. I think that he will succeed in them just because of his ability to not only run, but to pass and create pass plays off of his feet. I mean, just like right here, he does that where, sometimes he can run, sometimes he'll pass. You never really know what he's going to do. And, just create plays like he almost shovels this pass instead of throws it. He really almost shovels it. And, that's probably why it's so low, but it's to get that first down. And he really tries some out of the book plays and tops emotions just to get, them extra yards, especially when he needs them.
Right. So I mean, the rush gets home here, and then obviously the edge guy on the outside, he's got a free hit on the quarterback, and he feels that he knows he's got to get this ball out quick. The running lane isn't quite there for him. He sees a backer in front of him. Obviously, this guy's going to be coming up, and he knows he has defensive lineman who's trailing him that may be able to get to him. So makes the right decision. Hey, there's Stoops. He's in this little open spot. Let me get this ball out to him real quick. So I mean, as he's being hit, he throws a ball, and it's not a great ball, but it is a ball that's catchable. Stoops obviously has very sure hands, as many Oklahoma fans. I'm pretty sure that's who that is because he's very reliable. And I remember watching him all season and hearing the what sounds like boos, but it's all of Oklahoma people yelling Stoops, and that was a connection that you saw a lot. And then his ability to just make really good decisions. Now here was it. Here was the first game that they dropped, the
Look
Kansas game.
look at that. Go back and look at that fake pitch outside. He turns his head, extends his arm outside number 16 right there, just just to get that
To
DV one
bite that
step
one
off.
step. There it was, because
Like
otherwise
that's
he'd be coming right here.
and we talk about like I know we've talked about defense a lot, and one thing that's hard to defend is somebody who can do everything, and this guy can.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, what are you defending for? You got to have it in your mind. Either you defend the if you either you defend him passing or you defend him running after he starts to break away. So I mean, you prepare for it before, and that's one of the things that is really hard to prepare for because he'll get you going one way and then you've prepared for it and then he'll hit you with another and you never know what he's going to do because he can do both so well. And it also really helps the other because when he runs and you commit to the run, he can see that while you're doing it. And if you're committing to the run while he's, scrambling, he'll just pass it. And if he sees you holding back, he'll probably even fake and probably tuck down and run it, but he can also fake, see that you see that and he tucks down and you run and then he'll just throw it. So I mean, we've saw all three of them things and it's really hard to defend because you never know what he's going to do. I don't even think he knows what he's going to do until it comes down to it, just because of his ability and his awareness to read what's going on the field.
Yeah, I mean, probably the worst game of the season for him, or close to it. I think there may be one or two that people would argue, but he did not play great in the Kansas game. As far as when you look at his passing, it was his lowest uh, all season. He was 14 to 19, 171 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. Again, he only had 6 interceptions, and he never threw multiple in one game. But he had 3 touchdowns on the ground. So he took what was given him. He had 14 carries for 64 yards in that Kansas game, which is a lot for a quarterback. So, even though the passing game really wasn't there that day, Kansas did a good job taking it away and kind of frustrating them a little bit. They didn't win that game, but they were close and they almost did. And he took what was given, which was, hey, I can run the ball against them. They're not, their defense is more worried about, is set up to play the pass game. I'm going to use my feet to help my team win. And I mean, they didn't win, but he rushed for three touchdowns on his own. So he
And
obviously is willing to take what is given. Depending on what it is, he's going to make that right decision most of the time.
And you could really argue that they wouldn't have lost a game to both Oklahoma State and Kansas if they just let this guy run the ball more, if they had more designed quarterback runs and actually used them in the games. Because, I mean, when you're running for almost 5 yards a carry, why are you not running every play, controlling the clock, playing smart football, and getting more yards than about 60 and 14 carries. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think that they probably played that worse on the offensive coordinator's part because even if he did throw a pick, he didn't throw the ball that much during the game, and he was about, let me look, 70%, 73% completion rating.
Yeah,
So I mean, like, he was still throwing well. He's a
he was
very
throwing
accurate
well.
guy.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like I think they probably should have ran him more
The That is especially true in the Oklahoma State game. He only had 4 carries and 4 for -7 yards,
with
no
2 sacks.
touchdowns.
Two
Yeah, he
sacks is where
right,
them that's where
exactly.
them negative yards come in. So
So,
anything that he makes on the ground,
and
it
he
doesn't matter.
obviously, I mean, he threw for 344 yards, 26 to 37. So I mean, he was that was a passing game for him. And it's bedlam. It's crazy. Obviously, that's the whole point of it. It's a rivalry game. It's always big. Oklahoma normally wins it, but you never know what's going to happen. I do think that looking back at it, if he had had more opportunities to run the football and affect the offense with his legs, I think that would have helped him overcome this, because I think that's the little bit of secret sauce they were missing in this game that you had seen them use plenty of other times. But nonetheless, he's still making good throws. He's still making big plays. And even though it wasn't enough for them to overcome that game, he still had a really good season and led Oklahoma to a great season.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of future success with him at Oregon, playing into their system.
Yes.
I know they like to. I mean, you don't see it much with Oklahoma. They're more of like a full like empty team, um, but you'll see Oregon use a lot of their running back to make plays in the passing game because they have a few running backs that are very utility backs. Is what I'd call them. They can run the ball very good and they're very quick, but they're very good at getting downfield and making plays out of the backfield with screens. And you don't see Dillon Gabriel throw a lot of screens at Oklahoma. And I think that's something that Oregon can do very well with him, especially with him being able to do RPOs with the screen off of it, with a read to even throw an outside screen, a read to hand the ball off to his running back while he's looking at an end where he can keep the ball. That can be very effective with him, especially at Oregon. And I think Oregon can do a very good job with him as long as they utilize him right.
So uh, Oklahoma had a 2-game little slide, and they almost lost to UCF. So you really could say 3-game slide. And then they played that West Virginia game, and you saw a little bit of that film. He threw for 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 423 yards. He also, make sure I get this stat right because this is absolutely ridiculous. 23 of 36, 423 yards, 63.9 completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He threw for a 63-yard touchdown. He was sacked twice. He carried the ball 11 times, rushed for 50 yards, and scored 3 touchdowns with his feet. Scored 59-20. They got back right after their little slide for a couple games. They said, "Hey, this isn't us. We need to make sure that we get back on it." And he led the way with an absolutely monster game, trashing a decent Big 12 opponent. I mean, they were 6-3. They're nothing to sneeze at. And I mean, they got themselves back right. He led the way and led the charge with 8 total touchdowns that day, which is unreal.
That is insane.
It is really insane. And then not quite the numbers day when they played BYU, but he still threw for 2 touchdowns. Was still fairly accurate, over 60% rating, almost 200 yards offense, and it was a different kind of game for them that game. Not nearly as showy, and they knew that BYU was going to be a little bit tougher on the defensive side, but they got back right in that West Virginia game. They came out, played a well enough game to beat BYU, and then of course they finished off the season against TCU, which went fairly well for them. They scored 69 points. He scored 4 touchdowns, 3 in the air, 1 on the ground, and threw for another 400 yards. He had 3 games with 400 yards plus in 1 year, so that's great. And he was this is a get for Oregon. When he entered in the portal, it's my belief that he probably already knew where he was going before he entered, because I don't really know if there was really anyone else in contention to get him, because I think Oregon was the destination.
Yeah.
And I mean, for good reason. Like we will have some more videos coming out in the future about Oregon and who they've got, who they're bringing back, and where they are. We're going to do comprehensive breakdowns of a lot of the top teams and how they're looking for the 2024 season. Some of that we're kind of interested in that second portal window in April. But as it stands for just him going to Oregon, Oregon has a big time talent on their hands. He's a big time leader. He's a big time playmaker. And I think he's exactly what you're looking for to replace. I mean, you had an all-star in Bo Nix. Now, I mean, I know people have their opinions of him, but he, revitalized his career at Oregon, had 2 good years there, and, led them to a hair's breadth away from competing for a national championship. Obviously, they ran into a little bit of a better team, at least when they play each other in Washington. But that's a lot to replace. I mean, I think he set the single season pass record for completion percentage, which that's a whole nother thing that I kind of took issue with the way they did it, but it's whatever. But to replace that is pretty tough, and you replace it with, in my opinion, a better player in Dillon Gabriel because he can do a little bit more than Bo Nix. And I think he's just as good of a leader. And I think that Bo Nix was a fantastic leader of men and for that team. But I think Dillon Gabriel is the same way in the way that he plays and the way that he carries himself. And then I think he's just got a little bit more oomph in him as a playmaker. So I'm very excited to see him at Oregon with all of the weapons that they have. And Oklahoma obviously has weapons, but very excited to see him, dress out in all the many, many colors of the Oregon Ducks and get to play with some studs on the offensive side of the ball, and then also have a very good defense to complement that offense.
The one thing I would say about Dillon Gabriel is that the one takeaway, I guess you'd say, is that he is 5'11 and 200 pounds. So, I mean, he's not going to be able to throw the ball as far as you'd like sometimes. He's probably going to have a few underthrows, if we're being honest. And, with that being said, I know Oregon has the coaching talent to work within what this guy can do, and it really works with what Oregon does because Oregon likes to hit you fast because they are very fast around the board on offense. They like to hit you fast, and they like to hit you underneath. And then when you get sucked down underneath, then they'll hit you over top. But it's not as often that they hit you over top. They really just like that underneath short game, especially with screens, slants, any like running back routes. That's their
Mm-hmm.
bread and butter. Them wheel routes with their running backs. But later on you'll see them hit you deep usually. And usually you'll see their tight end going across the middle of the field to pick up some yards for them, which also helps them out a lot. And I think that Dillon Gabriel can really fit into their system. He can extend plays when he needs to, and he can run the ball very well. And utilize him with Jordan James, who their running back is, and he can run some option with Jordan James,
Mm-hmm.
and I think
That's a deadly
that is
combo.
something that I look forward
Yes,
to so much.
I
I
agree.
got to see Jordan James play when he was in high school at Oakland here in Tennessee, and that kid is special and he is
Mm.
fast, and that is one thing you'd like to say about most of Oregon's players is that they're fast. Um, so I think that Oregon's getting a very big get right here, and I think it honestly might be the Big Ten's new kryptonite because I think they come in and
Mm.
they shock a lot of the Big Ten this year coming in there because they're a Pac-12 team. They couldn't even beat out Washington last year, and we saw what Michigan did to Washington. But I think they might have something to say about it this year, especially with what else they're bringing in besides Dillon Gabriel. But we'll get to that next time. Is there any closing thoughts that you'd have, Rev?
We'll obviously talk more about Oregon as we go and in the future, but you talked about possibly shocking the Big Ten, and I think that they needed, not that Oregon was necessarily missing firepower because they obviously have it. But and this is again, I don't want to knock Bo Nix because I actually really like the guy and I really like the way that he kind of reinvented himself at Oregon and took college football world by storm there.
It's a good story. Yeah, he had a
Yes,
very
it's a
good story.
fantastic story, and I love that. But I think that adding Dillon Gabriel into the mix of talent that you've got is just that little bit more that gets you past into the elite tier. I mean, Oregon was right there, and everybody in the world thought that Oregon was the better team than Washington, even after Washington had already beat them. Like when they played that
Twice.
Pac-12
When
championship.
they beat them twice, everybody still thought it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't one of those because I had a vast appreciation for what Washington was doing. That first game maybe was a little bit more surprising, but going into that second one, the whole world was convinced that Oregon was just going to beat them again. And I'm thinking, hang on a second here. I know Washington has had their struggles, but remember who this team is, and also the fact that we're giving a lot of credence to a team that already has lost to this. Now I know, beat a team twice difficult to do, but obviously Washington was capable of doing it. And I think Oregon needed just a little bit more, and it was just not quite there for them. And I would go so far as to say that if Dillon Gabriel fits the way that I think he will, and this is obviously we don't know, we'll see more of him in the spring and everything like that. But just watching his film and watching who he is as a player and seeing that translate to Oregon, I feel like is the best fit. And yeah, he's going to do all that great check down stuff that Bo was able to do, flare routes and, little bubble routes and little wheels and all that kind of stuff, short stuff across the middle. He's going to be great at that. He can do that too. But I think, the knock on Bo that there always had been was he doesn't throw the deep ball. Now, obviously he did, and Oregon fans will say, well, he still threw it deep, but he had I think one of the shortest completion yardage, like among the top quarterbacks, obviously not all of them. But when you looked at all the top quarterbacks, that was something that was a little bit different for his because he was doing a lot of the pop passes in the backfield, which were counting as passes, and obviously that those go for shorter, sometimes go for shorter gains when the yards after catch is in quotations don't go for very far. But you add Dillon Gabriel, who likes the deep ball. Yeah, he'll underthrow him sometimes, but you get him in that like 30 to 45, 50 yard range. He loves that, and he hits those. So you give Oregon the extra threat of a guy who is more comfortable throwing that deep ball. Not that Bo couldn't do it, but Dillon Gabriel is used to doing it. He did it. We just watched a lot of film with him doing it at Oklahoma. So you get a guy who's used to doing that with the weapons that he's got, with the running back that he's got in the backfield with him, and overall, to me, a better team because I think Oregon's a better team than Oklahoma across the board. So that just makes me excited to see them play. And they obviously have a very big showdown against Ohio State, who's the other like major contender. I mean, I still think you got to watch out for a dark horse in Michigan because you never count them out. But obviously, everybody else's opinion is it's going to be Oregon or it's going to be Ohio State. The Big Ten did away with their division, so you could see a rematch of a game, especially if you're talking about Oregon, Ohio State. So there's a lot of fun to be had in the 2024 season. There's a lot of fun to be had in talking about this Oregon team and talking about their future matchups. But the overarching thing that we wanted to focus on for this video, and we think he deserves it, is that Dillon Gabriel is an absolute star, and man, Oregon got a good one.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd like to say before we close out is that you hit right on the nerve with what I was saying about him going in between that 30, 40, 45 range with him throwing that considered deep ball. I think that is the range, and that is something that Oregon does well because, like I said, they like to go fast, and that's not just with their players. That's with everything they do, whether it be screens, whether it be the
Mm-hmm.
wheel. They like to when you hear the term quick nine, that is a vertical route. So like it's literally just a vert. It's a vert, just a straight route. But with the quick nine, you're not waiting to throw it, 60, 70 yards. You're throwing that right off your drop. So I mean, 1, 2, 3, throw it. And that's going to be in your 30 to 45 range. And that's like to the T what Bo Nix or what Bo Nix really couldn't do, but what Dillon Gabriel will be able to do. And I think that will be a big key to Oregon's offense next year. And if it isn't, it probably should be. And Dan Lanning needs to fire his offensive coordinator and find a new one. Um, with that being said, though, the future is very bright green and yellow over in Oregon and Eugene, and I think that they have something very special coming up this year, and I can't wait to look forward to it. They do have a big possibility to come in and at least make the 12-team playoff and even do something with their chance that they I think will probably have. With that being said, this is me and Rev. Stay locked in, everyone.